You know what? I know that change is scary, whether it's leaving a relationship that no longer serves you, or taking a leap in your career, or facing an unexpected life shift. The uncertainty can feel overwhelming. And the fear of the unknown, the self doubt, the what if I fail thoughts, it's exhausting, right? But if you could just turn that chaos into clarity, and what if instead of resisting change, you could step into your power and use it as a catalyst for transformation? So that's exactly what we are diving into today. And my guest, Naz De La Rosa, founder and CEO of Naz De La Rosa Coaching and Consulting, certified life and spiritual coach, and host of the popular Third Eye Talks podcast. Before launching her coaching business in 2019, she spent over 16 years as a senior marketing professional in publishing, real estate, and the nonprofit world. She's seen firsthand what it takes to navigate major transitions, both personally and professionally. And she's dedicated to helping women master change and reclaim their power. So if you're feeling stuck, unsure, or afraid of to take that next step, this episode is for you. So let's break it down with Naz and uncover how to turn uncertainty into clarity and fear into empowerment. Welcome to the show, Naz.
Thank you so much, Dimple, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so happy to be here and honored to be talking to your audience.
I'm actually very excited to talk to you because, so just so you know, she invited me to her podcast. We talked about Kundalini. And after that, I actually fell in love with her background, her beauty, and her inner beauty and her soul. And I'm like, who is this woman? I need to like stalk her. So then I stalked her on Instagram. I'm like, I need to bring her to our podcast. So, Naz, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. And I'm so happy to be in the presence of a fellow stalker because that's exactly what I do. I'm like, where do I find you and how do I get to know you? So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, Naz, I know that you've made major career shifts from senior marketing roles into coaching and then podcasting. What was the biggest challenge in navigating that change? And how did you find clarity in the chaos? Please tell our listeners.
Yeah, so I definitely have had an affinity to creating change always. But I think that a lot of the changes that were happening to me were I was bringing them on, but then not knowing how to alchemize them. And the hardest part of that process for me is always the releasing of the previous identity
Mm.
because you get comfortable with what you do, with the role that you have, with the titles that you have, with your day-to-day routine. And when you shake that up, either intentionally, you're doing it yourself, or it happens to manifest for you, where things like you get let go from a job, or someone breaks up with you, or you just reach a goal and decide after all this work, I don't really even know if I want this anymore. When you're in those phases of change, I think the hardest thing is letting go of the identity and the attachment that you have to that previous version of yourself. That's always really hard. And I really do believe that that's because we place a lot of our identity on outside factors like who we are, titles, possessions, all of those things instead of our innate qualities that we can take from one role into the other forever.
Wow, I love that. I feel like what you're saying is like spot on for me, even in my personal journey right now. And sometimes I'm like struggling with, hey, am I the yoga instructor who was like a yoga instructor years ago? Or am I the spiritual coach? I also keep battling. So I feel like our listeners will really value this because you have literally skipped right from one title to another title. And now you're a spiritual coach.
Yes.
I would love, you know what? This was not in my questions list, but I need to know why did you choose this one, this career, or this profession? Like, what was the reason before we go into our actual topic?
Yeah, yeah. So this is for me the career of a lifetime. As you said, my background was in marketing. And when you're in the world of marketing, a lot of your passion is about branding, right? And what does the brand represent? Who does the brand serve? How does the brand shift with time? How does it stay relevant? And during the pandemic, when I had two children under 5, I had to leave the job that I was in, which was a really cushy position to be in. But because I had really small children, I was given the choice. You either come back in person 100% of the time, or you've got to go. And one of my priorities, one of my guiding principles is my family comes first. So if I stick to that, Spirit is going to find a way to help me navigate it because I'm sticking to my core values, right? To what's really important to me. So when I was up against that decision, I was talking to a lot of my friends and they were like, Naz, you have been a spiritual person your entire life. And you're always talking to us. And it's true. My initial trade was an astrologer. I grew up with astrology. My mom was an astrologer. And she
Wow.
taught me that craft really early on. So our conversations, even as children, were about energy, manifestation, astrology, numerology, the power of numbers. So it was all this really magical, spiritual stuff. But as it happens, you get on a path and you're like, let me go to school, let me do something that is what fits in the most. And for me, what fit in the most at the time was marketing because it was a way of branding and being able to work with something. And in any case, during the pandemic, my friends were like, why don't you just do what you do, but get paid for it? Have you ever heard of coaching? Have you ever worked with a coach? And I had never heard of the coaching industry. I did not know who did that, what they did. And a friend sent me a link and I shared it with my husband. And I was like, did you know that this was a thing? He's like, I've never heard of that. He's like, but it sounds like you. And I got started. I took a course and I was like, where has this been all my life?
Oh man,
Where
nice.
has this been all my life? And then take it a layer further when I was training, when I was getting my certifications. Um, one of my instructors said, spiritual coaching is a business. You can become a spiritual coach and teach people how to go through changes in their lives. And I was like, what? That's a thing? And every time I find myself in those situations, like, that's a thing. Oh my goodness. Explored it further, became certified in that, and I have never looked back. Like, I love to coach people through transitions using spirituality as a tool. And it's just opened up my world.
Wow, thank you for sharing and welcome to the family.
Thank
That's
you.
that's amazing. So, I know that as a coach, you help women make massive life changes, right? Like you mentioned transitioning and you yourself transition, which is awesome. So, what patterns do you see in those who successfully transform their lives versus those who stay stuck? And feel free to even share your own story if you want to.
Yeah, I think that what has made it easier and what I've noticed in people who have an easier time in creating changes, they don't think about it too much. They don't think so far ahead in the process of like, how am I going to get from marketing director at this real estate company to spiritual coach and podcaster? Like, they
Yeah.
don't try to see that entire path before they take a step. They go, well, I don't know, but I know at least that I'm not this anymore. So let me take the first step to figuring out what it is that does resonate with me. Let me explore it with the universe. And then they go, okay, well, now I've explored it and I've got this. So what comes next? They're very step by step, like just following the next thing that lights up for them instead of, all right, I've got to make this massive shift. And here are all the things that have to happen and all of the points that I have to take care of. They're just very flexible and they go, okay, it's not that I know how the whole process has to go, but it's that I know how I don't want the process to continue going. And so I'm willing to create that change. Does that? Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
they're not riddled with all of the details. They're more like, what is the next step?
because when we have all the details in the world, obviously that's going to cause a lot of overwhelm and burnout. And then you're
Mhm.
like, forget this. I don't think this is for me, you know?
Yeah, you talk yourself out of it before you've even explored it. You know, in the podcast, my podcast is a great example of that. When I decided I'd like to try my hand at podcasting because I'm noticing all of these different things and I just want to share them. I didn't think about like how do you put it together? What mics do you need? Where is the studio? How do you get it on all of the platforms? I was just like, I know that I want to share something. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to Google like how do you start a podcast? Follow that. I'm going to ask somebody, how did you start your podcast? Oh, that's what you do. Okay, so that the next thing is okay, what kind of mics are what's a good mic? Okay, let me buy the mic. Like very step by step of what's in front of you instead of, oh my gosh, to get a podcast and launch it takes so long. That
Wow.
stops you before you've even started.
That's a great way because I think you did the smart way. I did the other way. I just paid someone to do the podcast for me, and it was my worst nightmare ever.
Oh
That
no, I
that
was
that
gonna say that's actually another way. There you go. But
But for me, it did not work because that person was a scammer. Anyway, I paid $5,000 for to somebody to start my podcast because I was like, I don't have the time to do this, and I did not know anything. But you did the smart way, so that's amazing, interesting. So tell us about, if you want to start something, and usually women they know, okay, they want to start this, and you mentioned about what resonates with you, and some women don't even understand the word resonate. So maybe I
mm,
want to ask you about how does a person know what resonates with them versus what does not resonate with them? Can you tell us a little bit from your spiritual coaching perspective?
yeah. Yeah, so I think, not I think, I believe that all of us are born with a spiritual assignment. And I do think that for the first half of our lives, we're in denial of that, or we try to toy with other ideas instead of saying that would be really fun to do, and I love doing that, right? We try to do all the right things, we talk ourselves out of it, and then at some point, as we're getting closer to that first Saturn return, so like near 30, we really start to analyze, well, does what makes me happy, and what doesn't, what am I really ready to do and embody? And then some people either answer the call and they go, yeah, that is not, that doesn't bring me joy. That doesn't bring me peace. That doesn't make me have fun, which I think is something that we forget as adults. We forget that fun is one of our birthrights, and that as long as we're having fun, the whole world kind of opens up for us. So I think that for you to know, the number one thing is you have an assignment that is yours, and you're either answering the call for that assignment or you're denying it. That's
Wow.
first thing. We all come with an assignment. We all come to serve someone or something, and our entire journey is leading us to the discovery and the acknowledgement of what our assignment is, right? So
Mhm.
just like school, you see the assignment and you're either like, yeah, let me get to doing that, or you're like, forget it. I'm just not going to worry about it and I'm going to drop that class, right? Because I can't deal with it. So I think for you to know, you have to really sit down and say, like, what brings me joy? What am I doing for free? What am I already doing in my life for free? And what would I be willing to do for free if I didn't have to worry about money? And that question is really important. Is if money wasn't an object and your family wasn't an object and the people who have a stake in your life weren't a thing, what would you do? What would you do with the rest of your days? And whenever I ask this question in a session, but I frame it as if you won the lottery tomorrow, never had to worry about money again. Yes, for the first year, you're going to travel, you're going to party, you're going to buy yourself all the things. But think about year 10 of being a millionaire. Then what do you do? Then what
Yeah.
do you do with your time to continue to have fun, to continue to have joy? and people will come up with the most amazing answers and they immediately talk themselves out of it. Right? Like, oh, I would draw, but how do you make money drawing? How do you get into art? How do you do this? And I'm like, that wasn't the question. The question was, if you did have money, what would you do? Because that is your gift. That is your gift. And you can embrace it or you can deny it. That's really the two choices you have, right?
Love that because when they immediately, bring themselves out of it, fear comes in. And that's what,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I really want to know from your perspective, when people fear like this, they have this plan, they know they want to do this, and all of a sudden they have fear and then uncertainty of just having resistance towards change.
Hmm.
So, from your experience, was the key to then embracing change and embracing confidence and how do you help them with, all right, this is what is your gift. I know fear is coming up for you, but then how do you tell them to like embrace this new change and how their spirit is lighting up for them?
Yeah. So I use core values.
Mm-hmm.
I think core values and or guiding principles, and I use them interchangeably. I think they are our guidance system, and we don't have to make drastic changes to really shift our lives. All we have to do is know those core values and live by them day to day. And as you begin to live and prioritize your core values in your life, solutions start to show up that allow you to walk without the fear. Because then you know you're not walking as somebody else, you're walking as yourself. You're anchored into who you are. You're anchored into what you stand for. You're anchored into the things that are a yes and a no for you. And as you move on that path, your path unfolds for you.
Can you give us an example on how you used core values for
Mhm.
yourself as a podcaster or as a spiritual coach so that our audience understands, okay, how does she use it? And maybe I can replicate it in my life.
Yes. So one of my primary core values is efficiency. Like being efficient is important to me and delivering things in an efficient way. So once I realized that about myself, I could say yes or no to opportunities based on that, and I could shape things around them. So, for example, when I was launching the podcast, there's a lot of information about how do you frame it, how long do you make it, and I could have said, I want to structure it in the way that it's being done and, talk about something general like women's health or astrology, even because I love astrology, right? But when I sat down with my core values, I knew there's one thing I could talk about forever, and that is spirituality, and that can cover so many subjects. And two, I know I want to get to the point fast for me, right?
Hmm.
So I know I'm not going to be able to stick to something that is long. I have to go short format. And everyone was like, "You're going to do 30 minutes or less? Like how are you going to cover?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I know that efficiency is one of my core values. So my thing has to be short. My programs have to be short. All of my programs are less than 2 to 3 months, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
have micro ones, 2 to 3 weeks, and I love those. Um, working in my day is like I have to be able to get to the task, get through them quickly, and move forward. A job that's going to anchor me in one place and not allow me to have that quickness is never going to be for me, right? Writing a book is another idea that I've had forever, but I'm like, wait, writing a book requires you to sit down for long periods of time to deliver long format content. I'm like, I know that I'm not going to do that, but I will be in an anthology. I will maybe write some micro books, right?
Ooh.
50 pages or less. So it's about knowing yourself and your core values will guide that for you. Freedom is another one. And freedom is a very popular core value. If one of your core values is freedom, it means the traditional structure of the workplace is not going to work for you, but entrepreneurship will, right?
Yes.
or something that doesn't require you to sit down and stick to this exact structure that someone else has set for you. So the quintessential thing with core values is that it allows you to know thyself. And when you know yourself, you can quickly go, yes, that is for me. No, that is not for me. And then your path changes like a navigation system. I call it your spiritual navigation system, and knowing your core values is at the center of that. So that is the method that I use. Is this authentically me? Not is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do for me?
Oh man, this is powerful stuff. Super powerful stuff. That's amazing. So you talked about the podcast, and I also want to know, as a host of Third Eye Talks, you dive really deep into intuition and personal power. How can tapping into intuition help us master this change? Because you're talking about core values, and
Mhm.
sometimes people don't know what their core values are.
Yeah.
So, how do you help them see that this is what is for you, this is not for you through intuition?
Yeah. So before I answer that, and I love that
Sure.
question, I do want to give everyone like a little tip that I think will help them. If you don't know
Sure.
your core values, if you don't know them, one of the best ways, and I've got three, I'll give you three super quick. One is Chat GPT. I know.
Wow.
That's the futuristic tip, right? You go
Uh-huh.
into Chat GPT, you tell Chat GPT, I enjoy this. I love this. These are the things that are important to me. My perfect day looks like blah, 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 blah. Based on this information, what are my core values? And Chat GPT will give you a list. Okay.
I'm gonna try that.
Two, two, there is an existing, and you can just Google this, list of core values. You look at that list, and this is where I think a little bit of your question comes in, is you intuitively look at it and you,
Yeah.
yes, these are the words that stand out to me immediately that describe who I am and what I stand for, right? So that's two. And with all of these, you're going to use your intuition, really.
Yeah.
With part three, and this is the one that I use with longer like term clients, is think of a phase in your life where you were really happy, where you were just joyous, and maybe it wasn't like anything crazy was going on, but what energy were you embodying in that time of your life? What were you allowing yourself to be? What were you doing? If you could give it a word, what word would you give that season of your life? Whatever word you give that season of your life is likely one of your core values. Because when we are in alignment with our primary core values, we experience a lot of joy. So, revisiting the things or the times in your life when you were really happy will allow you to see what your at least one of your core values is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm actually just
Okay.
getting flashbacks. When you just said that, I was like, what's a good season? I was very happy. I'm like, oh, when I was a kid and I was on stage and I'm dancing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and then even till today, like when I dance, I'm just a whole different person. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is bringing goosebumps to me already.
I love that. That means that one of your core values is likely creativity
Ye-
or um or fun or leadership, right?
Ooh,
Being an entertainer in any form is there's a leadership aspect to it. You're on stage, everyone is looking at you.
yeah.
There's probably an aspect of you that resonates with that. But instinctively to me, when you say dance, it means creativity is one of your core values. So if something doesn't have a sense of fun, childlike fun, creativity, movement, it just is not in alignment with who you are, because that may be one of your core values.
I love that. And I'm sure when people do ChatGPT, like they'll find out more. And when they go through the list, they'll
Yeah.
find out more. So thank you so much for telling us about the core values. Is there anything else that they could try?
Yeah, so I th those are my top three. I think with
Awesome.
those three, you'll see the theme carry out, right? You'll see that the same word repeats itself. And getting back to your question, when you do that, use your intuition and remember, think back in your life like, yes, I always loved doing that. I always enjoyed that aspect of my life. I always felt really comfortable around people who allowed me to express that aspect of myself. And that will all allow you to create that list for yourself of your values, which you can then follow. So the entire process, even when you're using ChatGPT, you're going
Mhm.
to look at it and you're going to go, yeah, that doesn't resonate. I get why it popped out that reply, but the reality is that this is what immediately when I see it, it's got my name all over it. This is really what I'm all about.
Wow, this is like super powerful stuff. You're basically moving from chaos to core values and then embracing the change
And
through.
then the change comes, yeah, through following your core values and aligning with them. I think the beauty of core values more and as it relates to change and life transitions and getting chaos and making it clarity, it just allows you to be to give yes or no answers very quickly about your path, right? So the
Yeah.
chaos goes away. The chaos isn't a part of it because you're going in alignment with who you are. And so that flows. There's so much more flow there. And you can even see if there's an area of your life where you're very unhappy at any given moment, it's likely because you are not embodying one of your core values. So let's say, as an example, that one of your core values is creativity. If in your, when it comes to your health and how you take care of your body and all of that, if you're not being creative, like going to different sorts of classes, doing different dances, learning about different things, but if that's not there, you're going to be unhappy with that part of your life. The same goes for relationships, right? And intimacy. There's no creativity in your romance and in your intimate life. You're going to be unhappy with it because it is not in alignment with your core value of creativity, right? So, this is how we're able to very easily tap into ourselves and go, well, I'm not happy in this area of my life because I'm not allowing myself to say yes to me and embody my core values in that aspect.
So cool. Very cool. And I would love to also know, because you practice spirituality,
Mhm.
how can spiritual practices help people or women transmute chaos into clarity during these times of transition? Are there certain tips that you recommend for someone who's a beginner, does not know about spirituality, like anything that they could just try besides learning about the core values?
So I think there are practical things like journaling, scripting, which for anyone who may not know what that is, scripting is your journaling, but from the aspect of already being who you want to become, right? So
Mhm.
instead of I would love to have this, you're there already and you write it out. There's something about the psychology of thinking of things and then writing them down, right? There's something in there of a release. Breath work. Absolutely. Breath work is one of my favorite things for getting in tune with yourself, calming the nervous system. And those would be my top two. And of course, working with someone who can help facilitate the process for you. I wish that I had known that coaches existed because I would have gotten them sooner. I have my own entire coaching team
Nice.
now for my business, for my personal life. And I wish I would have gotten access to that sort of information earlier in my life. Still, it was meant to be, so no big deal. But access somebody who has the knowledge and can share it with you and can reflect it back to you. There's something really powerful about having ourselves and everything we say and do reflected back to us from a point of view of someone who has no interest in what happens. So I love
Mhm.
that. I love that reflection.
So, journaling, scripting, breath work. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about scripting for people that don't understand what that means?
Yeah, yeah. So scripting, like I said, it's a way of journaling from the future,
Hmm.
right? So picture your most aligned self, where you're trying to get to. Let's say I'm Naz the marketer and I'm trying to get to Naz the spiritual coach, right? Instead of saying I can't wait to be helping people, to be able to wake up every day and contribute through my podcast or whatever. I can't wait doesn't happen in scripting. In scripting, it becomes today was an incredible day. I woke up. I got to see three clients. They were working through this and this. I was able to facilitate the journey for them. At 4 o'clock, I logged on. I was able to record my podcast with Dimple, and she was incredible. And, you write it from the aspect of having arrived so you can access the energy of that manifestation already having happened instead of it's
Beautiful.
gonna happen. It's here.
That's beautiful. There's the spiritual coach again, talking about manifesting in her opportunity from moving from chaos into clarity. My
Clarity. I
last,
did that with my partner. That was one of
uh-huh.
the big areas where I use scripting as a tool.
Mhm.
Instead of talking about like the type of partner that I wanted or how things were going to be when I met that partner, I just would visualize the same thing, which was us at dinner, right? Oh, today I went to dinner with, my husband, and we talked about this and we laughed, and it was so, I felt so at ease. And eventually I attracted that exact person who made me feel exactly that way. And I love that about scripting. It just allows you to see how the feelings are going to be, and it just super speeds that process for you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, you're basically going into the future, thinking from your future self on what you really want and then bringing it into present time so you can bring on that energy. That's
Yeah.
amazing. A lot of people don't even try it because they're like, is that such a thing? They just don't understand it. But that's
Yeah.
a great way to just script, and maybe we'll do another podcast with Naz on attracting the right partner and how she did it. And so we can even do that. That's amazing, especially for all the single women out there. My last question, Naz, is if someone listening right now is like, let's say, overwhelmed by change, maybe they're going through a breakup, maybe they're going through change of job loss or any certain scenario, what's one actionable step that they can take today just to start regaining clarity?
hmm I think you have to do what I call honor the pause, right?
Ooh, I love that.
Honor where you are, and give yourself the time to mourn the person, the identity that you're releasing. Because I think a lot of times what we do is we say, I'm going to go from here to here, and like, I just want to get there. And we don't realize that there's an entire identity tied to this version of ourselves that we're releasing, and that even if we're ready to release them, there is something about that version of ourselves that we love and appreciate for the way that it got us through whatever phase of our lives we were in. So we mourn them. We don't give ourselves enough time to mourn the versions of ourselves that we're letting go of. So I would say honor the pause, honor the person that you were. Allow yourself to mourn the identity that you're letting go of, right? Write them a love letter. Tell them, thank you. I'm ready for you to go. Thank you so much for the resilience that you had to get through that phase of our lives. Thank you so much for the joy that you tried to maintain, even though everything was, chaotic. Thank you for the hustle that you had and the heart that you had to get us through that phase. Honor the identity that you're letting go of. I think that is number one. Until you do that, you're kind of rolling, snowballing one identity into the other, and then it gets very messy. So honor and understand that you are letting go of a version of you, and that you need to give your time to, give yourself time to mourn that person. So I would say that do that, do some of those exercises where you write a letter to the version of you that you're letting go, and cry it out, or do whatever comes naturally to you in order to give that identity the space that it needs to move out of the way so that you can move into the person that you're going to become.
Wow, that's so, so incredibly put. Honor the pause. I don't think I have ever honored the pauses. And I was like overwhelmed and burnt out and anxious. And I'm like, damn, it's so crazy. Like, this is a part of us that we need to let go of. That's so beautiful. Because if I went
Yeah.
back in time and I'm like, I just moved from one identity to the other with more chaos and more chaos and more chaos figuring it out. And I'm like, I never honored the pause. So I have to literally do this. This is amazing, Naz. Thank you. Where can our listeners find you, Naz?
So everything is on my website, which is nazdelarosa.com, but I always play on Instagram, and my handle is at Naz, N-A-Z, J, the letter J, Dela Rosa, Delarosa. And I'd love for you to find me there. And of course, tune into my podcast, Third Eye Talks, weekly episodes every Wednesday, all about the different areas of spirituality.
And we are going to also add all of her information on our show notes. And please go check her out. She's an incredible human being on this spiritual journey, or I should say, spiritual being on a human journey. I always say it both ways. So please go check her work out. Thank you so much, Naz, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dimple. I appreciate you, and I hope your listeners gained something today and that I was able to contribute.
Thanks a lot. And all of our listeners, always remember metamorphosis, not medication. And namaste.